Are you troubled by strange voices in your ears?
Do you experience feelings of dread in your basement, attic, or car?
Have you or your family actually listened to a spooky podcast?
If the answer is yes, don't wait another minute. Just pick up the phone and listen to the professionals.
Ghostbusters! Our courteous and efficient submitters are on call 24 hours a day to serve all your supernatural podcast listening needs as we count down to the latest release of the Ghostbusters series, Ghostbusters Afterlife 2021. We're ready to believe you.
I remember Revelations. And I looked as he opened the sixth seal. There was a great earthquake. Judgment Day. Raise a call.
I'm calling about what happened in New York.
There hasn't been a ghost sighting in 30 years.
Oh my god. What is happening here?
Her grandfather was a Ghostbuster. Something was coming and he knew it.
I think we opened the gates of hell.
Hey, have you missed us?
Who are you gonna call?
Podcasters! Assemble? Probably?
Hi, this is Justin Aki, graphic designer and one-half Significant Nautico.
Hello, this is Stephen White, co-host of Super Mega Crash Brothers Turbo and Cinema Salsa.
This is Eric Slater from Epic Fails of History, Too Young for This Trek, and Comic Zombie.
Hey everyone, Rob here, your friendly neighborhood Ghostbuster, host of And Sometimes Rob on the Geek to Geek Network, and member and co-founder of the North Star Ghostbusters here in Minnesota.
Hello crew, this is the Questing Truck with Questing on the Road podcast. And today we've just watched the new Ghostbusters movie, Ghostbusters Afterlife.
And we are here to talk about Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Ghostbusters Afterlife.
It is here, it is finally here, and it is exactly the movie that I thought it was going to be. Both good and bad.
Caution! Spoilers ahead!
Spoiler alert. So this season, we talked about the original classic from 1984, its vastly inferior sequel, and the controversial reboot from 2016. We even covered the surprisingly great game from 2009, the nostalgia of the animated series, and the original The Ghostbusters live-action series from the 70s that actually had nothing to do with the real Ghostbusters. The one with the gorilla. And now we've finally arrived at a movie that many of us thought we'd never get. 2021's Ghostbusters Afterlife. And I gotta say, just like with No Time to Die, this one was worth the wait.
And as a special guest today, I'm actually joined by my nephew, Christopher.
This is a very unique episode. I'm recording from inside the actual Ecto-1 used in Ghostbusters. Just ignore the sirens. They're the ones on the roof. Yeah, I'm leaving them on for character. Actually, I'm kidding. That was a little joke for Corey.
Well, I guess first impressions, what did you think of the movie?
So my fiance and I saw this one with the kids, and I think we all really had a good time with it.
As a moderate fan of Ghostbusters, I've always been open to the idea of seeing the original cast reunite for a third entry. But after many years of the classic will they or won't they routine, plus the passing of Harold Ramis, I'd accepted the fact that that would probably never happen, and I was okay with that. But then the announcement for Ghostbusters Afterlife came along, boasting the return of the original team, directed by the son of the original director. I was skeptical, but was willing to wait and see.
I think for the kids, they enjoyed it as just a big popcorn movie. While for Meg and I, who both grew up on the original movies, this one really hit home for us. I could tell we were both getting a little emotional towards the end. More on that later.
And I cried like a damn baby at the end. It was an ugly cry in public. It hit you right in the feels. I don't care I did that. I did have a pitcher of beer in at that point, but...
Well, first of all, which movies have you seen?
I've seen the original ones, but it was a long time ago. And then I saw the 2016 one with my mom and Audrey.
Okay. So you've seen Ghostbusters 1, 2, and the 2016.
So I saw this movie the week after it came out, the day before Thanksgiving, and even booking my ticket a week in advance, and at non-IMAX or Crazy Theater.
In terms of where I saw this film for the first time, I got to see it multiple times because as a cosplayer here in Minnesota, we actually get invited out to local theaters in order to help bring people in, and then we show up in full costume and stuff, and then stick around and watch the movie.
The theater was pretty busy. People just really wanted to see this movie.
When the teaser dropped, I was intrigued by the premise they were presenting. After the full trailer, I was intrigued even more.
I tried not to watch any of the trailers going in because I was worried that it would be 90% of what happened in the movie. I've since gone back and watched some of them, and it wasn't as bad.
So the first night was actually a Wednesday screening, which we found out about kind of last minute. And we reached out to the theater and didn't actually hear back from them. And so we just said screw it and showed up in full gear anyway. So there was a small number of us that were there for this sort of sneak peek Wednesday night screening. And then Thursday, the North Star Ghostbusters split up into two groups, and we went to two different theaters in the cities that had invited us out. And then on Friday was the big one. We were at the Mall of America at the B&B theaters. And normally when I do theater events with the other costuming groups that I'm a part of, we're limited to like 5 or maybe at most maybe 10-ish costumers that would come out and hang out in the theater and take pictures with guests and stuff. But the fine gentleman at the B&B theater at the Mall of America, who I don't think knew what he was getting himself into, did not put a limit on it. And we had, I believe, over 30 fully uniformed and geared up Ghostbusters from around Minnesota that all came together, and it was an absolute blast.
My excitement for the film grew the closer it got. So much so that I decided to forego other plans just to see it.
You've not seen any of the cartoon?
No.
And you never played the video game?
Nope.
So, with that context, and that's being his history, what did you think of the movie?
I think it was okay. It was nice for like a family movie. I would watch it with my family over again.
I'd heard all the praise, and I'd heard all the negative reviews. And when I walked out of the theater, I began to understand both sides.
And I hope they enjoyed it as much as I did.
I don't know. I just feel like it was like, whenever it was supposed to be serious, it didn't take itself seriously. But it's a family movie, so.
Yeah.
Right away, the tone felt right.
Spoiler for my review, I thought it was a reinvigorating of the series without relying too much on the problematic characters. Vinkman.
And where would you rank it based on the 3 you've seen so far? Like, where would you rank all 4 movies, I suppose?
I like the first Ghostbusters movie the best. Mm-hmm. And then, the second one. And then this one will be the third one. I don't really like the 2016 one.
Didn't really like the 2016?
Nah.
Well, I didn't watch the 2016 one until I did this submission for this podcast. So I was rather neutral on it as well. I think I rated 2016 just slightly above Ghostbusters 2, but just very slightly. But I'm more or less right where you're at, I think.
I heard some meh things from critics and some message boards I'm on, but for real, I'm all over this movie. It just hits the spot.
So broadly speaking, did we like this movie? I'm going to say yes.
It's not a complete Stranger Things ripoff. All the callbacks in the first and second movie slot right in. You get the music cues. Hell, the the same song they used in the video game too. It was great.
Like I said, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be, both good and bad. I remember seeing the New York Times review saying that it was all about nostalgia and merch sales. And it's like, yeah, it's a Ghostbusters movie. Where the hell have you been?
This one, for me personally, I like this one. I like the original 1984 one the most. I think I like this one next. Is where my ranking's at.
Like, what was Ghostbusters 2, if not kind of a rehashing of the original, but with more toys in it and new costumes? Like, how is that different from Captain America in Avengers Infinity War? He has a new costume. He has a new arm shield, so you get new toys out of it. Like, every single movie, the superheroes change costumes so that you can get more toys out of it. Well, I don't know why Ghostbusters would be any different. It's not highbrow entertainment we're talking about here.
Actually, for all of the nostalgia bombs and solid callbacks, this movie can stand on its own. I mean, it still requires the backstory that we don't get. If you've never seen the first movie, at least, you're going to be a little lost.
It's silliness, with lots of weird plot elements in it and things that don't make sense.
Now, there was a lot of things they called back to from the original. They were really leaning heavy on the nostalgia.
This film does a lot of things right, but I also feel like it dropped the ball when it came to something original.
Which sometimes it worked and sometimes it seemed a little bit forced.
Yeah, it did.
When I heard critics say it was heavy on nostalgia, I was skeptical on how bad it was.
They really retreaded the original movie's main plot.
But after seeing the film essentially remake half of the first film, I quickly got it.
Although they put a I liked the twist on it. Because I know some of the other podcasters have mentioned that, they didn't understand, it was never really explained why this building was channeling, paranormal energies and so forth, which created the first manifestation of Gozer.
The Gozer plot could have been so much better had it not just rehashed the original plot.
And in this movie, they talk about how, there was this mine where they had this special kind of steel. That's where Ivo Shandor actually, got the materials to actually build that building. And it's something about those materials specifically that actually made that building kind of a beacon.
Everything leading up to Gozer's return was intriguing. From Ivo Shandor being responsible for the town, down to Egon's trap to keep Gozer at bay.
And so, because this is where that material came from, of course, this place in the middle of nowhere, this old little mining town, is now this focal point for this new problem.
But once Gozer reappears, nothing's new. Same stakes with recycled jokes.
We start with this eerie opening in a cornfield.
Okay, so 32 years after the Ghostbusters saved New York, they are back. Nope, that's just the ghost of Harold Ramis flipping his truck in a cornfield, then literally giving up the ghost to some apparition.
This whole opening sold me right away.
I think they portrayed Harold Ramis pretty damn well in this movie.
The way we don't actually get a good look at Egon's face is extremely clever.
I didn't know what was going on. I knew it was Egon. That's really all I knew. And I knew he was like putting some kind of plan in motion, and it failed.
Yeah.
Making Egon's ghost an invisible character in the movie wasn't just genius from a story standpoint. It was one of the most meta things they could have done.
If you remember him from the mid to late 2000s, he was a little chunkier, fully bearded, full-on afro going on, little Jufro, up towards his death. When they portrayed him in the movie, it looks how I remember him later in his life. The body double and eventual ghost apparition version of him, I mean, they do look like him. And not just in a CGI way. He was in this damn movie. Even the stuff later on with the ghost stuff, it just felt like a sarcastic ghost, but like not really sarcastic, just like super smart to everybody.
The fact that Gozer actually kills Egon in the cold open also sets up the stakes like never before. And the very intentional use of the ghost trap, the PKE reader, and later the proton pack as the film's MacGuffins was insanely smart. Especially since those gadgets are probably not only the most iconic aspect of the entire Ghostbusters franchise, but I would argue are some of the most iconic props in Hollywood history.
There is a solid foundation that this film is built upon.
Anyway, short story long, Egon apparently had a daughter at some point, and she has two kids aged 11 and 16. This threw me for a loop because at one point we see Janine, and she's not Callie's mom.
I also loved Janine's cameo in this.
So apparently Egon had Callie before joining the Ghostbusters in 84. That's the only thing that would make sense because the actress is like 40. So I guess it's before the Ghostbusters thing when he was still a professor.
Well, the whole premise is their family is kind of getting evicted from their house, and they've inherited Egon's farm when he passed away. So they're all basically moving out there. And
so Callie's broke, getting evicted, and takes her kids out to the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma to take care of her dead dad's affairs. And maybe live in the house because they have nowhere else to go.
A family inherits a house and its belongings from a recently deceased family member and soon discovers that said family member was a Ghostbuster. Seems airtight to me. When the plot follows that idea, it shines.
On one of the previous episodes, Corey said, "It's a ghost movie. Do ghost things." And I feel like the producers really leaned into that in the best way possible for this one.
When the film chooses to deliver a heaping scoop of fan service, it doesn't always land for me.
The kids mostly have their own side stories coming together at the end, a la Universal Monsters, but the world did feel kind of fleshed out. I love all the jokes about, like, Dirt Farmer had a family, so I mean, it was fun.
So going by the characters here, let's just go ahead and talk about the characters a little bit.
I thought all the new characters were great, and the movie does a good job introducing and developing them all.
What I found fascinating about Ghostbusters Afterlife, though, was I felt like there were multiple entry characters, like POV characters, depending on who you were in the audience.
I don't remember their names very well, but we have Phoebe, who is kind of front and center in the movie. She's really almost a main character.
Phoebe, Egon's granddaughter.
There's several characters that really show up a lot in our supporting cast, but I think she's the focal point.
The story of Phoebe was the strongest element this film had.
She was very much the heart of the movie.
I've seen McKenna Grace in several different projects, and I'm always impressed with her.
Brilliant actress.
She has a long and bright future ahead of her.
So Phoebe, played by McKenna Grace, is Egon's splitting image and clone. And I say that because she's smart, not really concerned with her safety or laws.
It's obviously Phoebe is our main character and is meant to be our main window, but I don't know how many of us can relate to a child prodigy genius. You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to experience things through her eyes.
Kind of on the spectrum, but self-aware enough not to care about it at all.
She seemed to maybe be on the autism spectrum, and I thought that was all really handled very well.
Here she plays Phoebe, an extremely intelligent outsider who's just trying to discover where she belongs in a family that's nothing like her.
She could have been so precocious, and it would have been so annoying, but I think it was the right mixture of being a smartass and still not perfect. She doesn't just have all the answers, she just knows a lot of random crap. Welcome to podcasting.
Like, it feels like there's a different kind of character for everyone. So maybe Phoebe is meant to more be for those weird kids. Between Phoebe and podcast, certainly. The kids that like weird movies, or in this case, old movies, in the case of Ghostbusters, and are interested in getting in and seeing this weird thing and being that weird kid that's ostracized and then goes on to do great things.
She's a brilliant, young, awkward, nerdy kid.
Her journey should have been the main focal point of this film, and for the most part it is. However, the narrative begins to shift its focus as the movie goes along, especially at the end, and she doesn't feel as important anymore.
She's Egon Spengler's granddaughter. She's very, knowledgeable, very intelligent, but somewhat socially awkward.
She has to attend summer school for whatever reason. Isn't she smart as shit, though?
I thought she did very well. Is she one of the characters that was from Stranger Things?
No, she's in, the Conjuring universe. She plays the daughter, Judy.
I'm not familiar with that universe, I guess.
But, yeah, she's from those. That's what I recognize her from.
Okay.
And then maybe some are more like the brother, who were just there.
Well, which characters were from Stranger Things? Well, I guess her brother...
Her brother was the only one from Stranger Things.
Was he? Okay. I don't know. I don't remember his name. I think it was Trevor?
Trevor, I think, yeah.
Who himself is kind of a genius in that he can fix cars at age 15, though I did have those friends in high school that loved working on cars.
Trevor, Phoebe's brother, the kid from Stranger Things, was great in this.
Finn Wolfhard is a very capable actor and also has a promising career ahead of him.
The older brother, he kind of doesn't want to go. He's very, I wouldn't say he's socially awkward the way, but he's very teenager, I guess.
Yeah, it was kind of cliche. The way he was talking to his mom, no, I don't want to move away from all my friends,
Yeah.
I think if there was one big criticism, it's that I'm not sure that the brother had any real purpose in the film outside of needing somebody to drive the car.
He's more of a supporting character, but he would have been really relatable for me at his age.
Finn gets a job at the local Sonic because apparently every teenager in the town works there. The town is 40 people and 20 of them work at the Sonic. I don't know how that economics works.
But his whole purpose in the film is to act in contrast to Phoebe.
His plot, I didn't really think was super... The only other part of the main part of his plot is he finds Ecto-1 in the garage, and he works on getting it running again.
Yeah.
Finn is apparently a grease monkey fixing up the old Ecto-1. Apparently, actually, in the road trip from New York to Oklahoma, we see him under the hood while Callie and Phoebe are watching the sunset on the roof of the car.
And then he's kind of the driver after that.
I don't know if I care at all that he doesn't like being there, because he got to fix up this cool old car that he very much enjoyed driving around and got to have fun. So it's that question of who do we feel for the most in this film?
Yeah, he just kind of...
Which, he's 15, so he shouldn't even be driving.
Yeah.
Which does come back in the movie.
Sure, he does fix Ecto-1 and becomes the wheelman, but what else does he do?
We also got introduced to Trevor's girlfriend or crush, I guess.
He has a crush on the older than him waitress, pretending he's 17, even though he's like 16 in a week.
Yeah, trying to get with the other girl.
Yeah, he kind of falls in love with a girl like almost immediately in the new town, and gets a job to be with, kind of work alongside of her.
Yeah.
And Lucky is nothing more than a love interest to Trevor.
I'm not going to say Lucky is an entry character or a POV character for everyone, because I think we really only hear her name said like twice in the movie, so she's just kind of there.
Actress was cute and good portraying small town life.
And I thought they did a great job with her character as well, even though we didn't get a whole lot of development.
We work one Kevin Bacon away from a dance-off, though, because this is a small town.
Podcast.
The character of Podcast is nothing more than comic relief.
Yep. We've got another heroic podcaster as one of our main characters.
Well, then we have Podcast, the character named Podcast.
Yeah. Will you ever look his real name?
I think they might have mentioned it, but I don't remember it, because they always refer to him Podcast through most of the movie. I think maybe when he's first introduced, I think that's who like bumps into Paul Rudd's character at the very beginning when he's coming into school, and I think he mentions his name then. But I'm not 100%. I have to go back and watch it again, which I can't do, at least not right now.
Detractor to the movie, we do meet Podcast, the so-called comic relief of the film.
And of course, Podcast's whole personality is he's almost like the Ray stand-in, which is kind of why they had like a little moment there at the very end too. But he's really into like the mysterious and strange, and he also has a wild imagination as well.
These feel like shallow characterizations at best.
See our Godzilla vs. Kong episode for more.
But he does a podcast. There's only one subscriber to this podcast, but hey, it's one.
Yeah, you gotta try some way.
And it's not lost on me that we're doing a podcast submission here with a guy named Podcast that does podcasts in the movie. It's kind of funny.
But there's very much the sense of like, you have a kid who kind of really wants to be there and is really interested in learning everything. And then her friend, Podcast, who maybe knows a little more about some of the ghost stuff. So he's kind of on that end, but like is still there learning.
I could have done without him, but I mean, we kind of did need an everyman, because later in the movie we get Paul Rudd fanboying about all the Ghostbusters gear and everything about it, but like, you needed someone who didn't know anything about it.
I liked him. He didn't really do much in the way of action. Like, he never like got like the proton packs going, and like, he wasn't ever shooting at ghosts.
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing he did was like
he kind of controlled the traps.
Yeah, he like whenever he was zapping the tiny marshmallow men.
Yeah.
They really add nothing to the story except numbers. The same could almost be said for Carrie Coon and Paul Rudd. Fortunately, they do have a greater purpose.
Paul Rudd is peak Paul Rudd in this movie.
You have Paul Rudd's character.
Where she has a teacher played by the sexiest man alive, Paul Rudd.
Well, I guess we have Paul Rudd's character. He's kind of their summer school teacher, but he's also a seismologist. And
I don't know why there is a summer school, but he's playing movies like Cujo. I don't know, I just phoned it in.
Who is absolutely the fans. Like, he's the one that thinks it's cool. Wow, look at this replica. I know what I'm seeing, even though, he doesn't necessarily know who Gozer is or any of that, but he knows the history of the Ghostbusters. I was obsessed with this when I was a kid kind of character.
I really loved the Baskin-Robbins nod. That felt like a clever Ant-Man reference.
We as adults are meant to see ourselves in him, I think, more.
Paul Rudd plays Mr. Gooberson.
Rudd, who's always a delight, plays Mr. Gruberson and acts as the tether to the new kids and the events of the original film.
Anyway, she finds out he's a seismologist and actually in the town working the summer school job to figure out the source of the daily earthquakes.
Part of the whole story going into this is like they're in the middle of nowhere near no seismic activity, but yet every day they have this earthquake.
In a town with no fault lines, no volcanoes, no nothing.
And I thought it was really interesting how, and I'd actually be kind of interested to know if this is actually real science, but they talk about like the difference between like a volcanic eruption, what the sine wave looks like, and then like what an earthquake looks like, and then like what the wave is when it's like a more of an explosion type thing.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Sort of the same as like why Paul Rudd was it's not a geologist, but whatever, earthquake guy. Shows how much of a tech genius I am.
So they kind of got this. The whole movie kind of came together in a way I was not expecting it to. I was kind of expecting like Paul Rudd and these kids to kind of get together, like then they go and bust ghosts, and they never really become Ghostbusters.
But like that's a thing that's just stated once as an excuse for why he exists, and why he's there, and then I guess why he's the summer school teacher.
I kind of then Paul Rudd didn't even really do anything.
Well,
because he just got possessed.
He was almost the comic relief, which was somewhat strange. I mean, he offered some guidance, I guess, early on, but yeah, he became kind of the mom's love interest.
And then after that, he got possessed, and then just wasn't in the movie till the end.
Yeah.
Phoebe's summer school teacher, who happens to be a part-time seismologist, which is convenient for plot reasons.
And then it's never brought up again, and his skills in that sense have absolutely nothing to do with anything. He just talks about, like, science is cool, and I'm otherwise just Paul Rudd in a Ghostbusters movie. And that felt a little off. You know, it's like there were little things that you were hoping were going to pay off later and maybe didn't.
Phoebe also tells a seismology joke and some winks, so Paul Rudd knows it's a joke. It was cute. Like the wink was just like, he's like, are you telling no? She's like, yes, because I winked. She's deadpan. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, he was all throughout the movie, but he wasn't important really, other than it being a love interest.
He also charms his way into being a love interest for Callie, which does feel earned.
I like Paul Rudd's interactions with the mom.
But he also ends up dating her mom, which also becomes convenient for plot reasons.
Callie is a woman who clearly had her fair share of garbage men, but to see Gruberson take a shine to Phoebe really makes an impact on her.
And then the other adults that were dragged to a Ghostbusters movie and don't care see themselves in the mom character.
She also doesn't have a job, maybe? I didn't really get that part. I don't know. The movie's focus really isn't on her.
And I guess that kind of brings to the mom. I don't remember her real name, but her story is she very much doesn't like her father, who is Egon Spengler.
That kind of annoyed me how she was just like, no, I don't care. He's just a bad person. I was just like, you're not going to try and like look at it from his perspective, like what he was trying to do. Like she doesn't care about trying to learn why he did anything. She's just stuck on the fact that he left.
Yeah, he left, didn't really say anything, didn't care about anybody. And that's kind of her thing, is she didn't think that he ever even called or even thought about her or her family at all.
Yeah. But she's a good actress. I liked her in other stuff. She was in Avengers, playing one of the villains, which is crazy because you look at her side by side and you're like, what?
Right. They're there being like, oh, yeah, I guess. Like, I guess this is going on. I guess I'm going to get sucked into this.
They do get a great joke when they go into town. Finn from Stranger Things holds up his phone and complains about the signal, saying 1 bar. And the mom is like, they better have a bar.
I don't know. Like, Paul Rudd's in the end, Paul Rudd's character is there because they needed somebody to be the new Rick Moranis, I guess. The person that gets possessed by the Keymaster. I don't, beyond that, you know what I mean? Like, is it there because we needed character development for the mom? Like, would this movie have been better if we spent more time with Phoebe and less time with everybody else as that one character learning and discovering things?
We also get to see the mom passed out with a bottle of wine later, so maybe she has a problem. Maybe she does need this town. I don't know.
And then, of course, at the end, both of them become possessed by the demon god ghosts.
So I feel like with the mom and with Paul Rudd, you were sort of retreading the same ground as we did with Sigourney Weaver and with Rick Moranis, but not as well, because they were very differently involved in the overall plot of the film.
Which was kind of a cool twist on the gatekeeper/keymaster subplot for the first movie.
Plus, they actually have pretty good chemistry together, which is nice.
Now, the parts of the movie that stand out are the interactions with the ghost of Harold Ramis and Phoebe.
Kind of guided by Egon Spengler's ghost. Now, that was something that was very abrupt to me. It first happened with Phoebe, and you mentioned like the chess set. Like at first, like he's almost playing chess with his granddaughter, and that's how she initially figures something weird's going on.
I didn't know it was him at first because like whenever she like actually saw him play back, he played back so aggressively, and I was like, okay, is this like a bad ghost? Like I didn't really catch on until she went down into the basement.
It starts out with a game of ghost chess and eventually leads to Phoebe finding the fire pole guided underground lab of her dead grandpa.
I wasn't sure until at the same time when I saw like the lamp actually pointing stuff out. I was like, okay, this is Egon's ghost. Yeah. I suspected it with the chess set, although she made a big deal about how she doesn't believe in ghosts, and then like almost like 2 scenes later, she's just kind of accepting that Egon's like pointing stuff out. Like she's actually interacting with this lamp as though it's Egon, and it isn't weirding her out that it's moving of its own accord.
Yeah, that was kind of like, I felt like that's kind of forced. I thought whenever she was like using that like ghost detector thing, and then she went under the chair, under the floorboard to find the ghost trap. I thought that was like another evil ghost just trying to like, guide her to like let out another evil spirit.
Another funny moment, Egon's directing lights around where Phoebe should find parts and how to fix things, and she's like, "How did you make such a small cyclotron?" And the light moves over to the entire wall of degrees. Yeah, we forget that he's actually the smart one of the group. Ray was the crazy one.
I will admit not everything felt shoehorned in.
Well, a lot of the old equipment makes its return. Like, you have your proton packs, you have your traps, and they look exactly like they did in the old movies.
Subtle nods and references were more welcome to me, like the headgear put on Louis Tully after being possessed by Vince Clortho. The toaster in the kitchen being the dancing toaster from Ghostbusters 2.
Phoebe uses her phone call to reach out to the old Ghostbuster number from the commercial. "Are you troubled by strange noises in the night?" And that number apparently goes to Ray's occult shop from the second film.
Let's also talk about that element that I think so many Ghostbusters fans were looking for, which is, tell me what happened to the Ghostbusters, right? Give me the story that I want for Ghostbusters 3. And that all sort of came in one giant lump of dialogue between Phoebe and Ray. When Ray's in the shop and Phoebe's in jail.
Phoebe basically confronts Ray about the breakup of the Ghostbusters. Apparently Egon screwed them over because he had to lead on something big. Before everything is hashed out, call ends.
The crunch bar Peter gave to Egon, and even Egon's collection of spores, mold, and fungus. But then you have the book stacking in Egon's home. The entire Keymaster Gatekeeper storyline rehash. Podcasts being covered in marshmallow cream, all the way down to recycled dialogue that doesn't always fit.
Nice appearance by Bokeem Woodbine as the sheriff. That man's in the weirdest shit. I only remember him from like 3,000 Miles to Graceland. And I think he was in The Sentinel, a terrible movie with the Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica. I don't know, he's in the weirdest crap.
When the sheriff said, "Who you gonna call?" really felt forced.
Between Egon's lab and all the cool Ghostbusters Easter eggs and gadgets, Ecto-1 was really the standout in this movie. It really looked like a beat-up old car that had been tinkered with over the years.
I really liked the side saddle gunner seat from Ecto-1.
That was cool, yeah.
And the addition of the gunner's seat, which might have been a callback to the real Ghostbusters, was super clever.
And actually like chasing that ghost through the city, I really liked that whole sequence. That was a lot of fun and really cool.
Ecto-1 wasn't just awesome looking, it was integral to the plot, and actually felt way more important in this movie than it was in any of the previous versions.
He gets it running and he starts joyriding through the cornfield, and then he ends up right next to Phoebe and her friend, and they're like chasing this ghost, so he's like, okay, I guess get in, and then they start chasing through the town, chasing after this ghost.
So I actually saw the movie more than once that opening weekend. I saw it Wednesday and Friday, and then on Thursday, I actually left halfway through the film because I was tired and I had been wearing a proton pack for too long, and I knew I had to wear it for an extended period of time the next day, and so I decided to go home early and get some sleep, because we hang out at the theater and then we go to a later showing of the film. And so I will tell you that I left about halfway through after the initial busting of the first ghost.
From a ghost called Muncher.
Oh, the one that was shooting the...
Yeah.
Which really is kind of the only main busting of a ghost in that film.
That's really the only big... Other than Gozer herself, or himself, or itself, and the dogs... Muncher is the only real ghost that really makes an appearance. There isn't very many ghosts in this. Then you have a ghost called Muncher, and then the other ghost you have like these little like mini-sized Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, which is like the cute ghost we were mentioning earlier. But so really the only real main ghost is Muncher.
I was kind of happy we didn't get Slimer again this time around. They can save him for a callback in the next movie if they want.
The midway point of the movie sees Phoebe and Podcast going against the movie's version of Slimer.
Instead of Slimer, though, we get a similar ghost character they call Muncher.
A ghost called Muncher?
Really?
Definitely feels like the sort of a new Slimer, which is very much kind of what it was. We all assumed it was Slimer when we saw the original trailers, and you didn't get a very good look at the ghost.
Who eats metal and can basically spit bullets.
Which is similar to Slimer in a way, but his stick is he actually eats metal, which was interesting.
And they utilize that to get their equipment back later in the movie.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't hate Muncher. he worked as a plot device, and I get that he was a comedic character there for the kids.
Good introduction to ghost catching, but Finn gets the car and immediately just goes like hauling ass, catching up with Phoebe and Podcast. The kids catch the Muncher, with an RC car trap. So I mean, like, Egon did keep up with technology. He was using drones and shit, but not before destroying half of the main street of the town, which was all of the town, because Ghostbusters.
But all the non-humanoid ghosts are still a bit weird to me. Seriously, he kind of looked like a tardigrade. But hey, I guess that's just a Ghostbusters trope at this point that they'll probably never explain.
They went and they've actually caught this first ghost, Muncher himself. And on the way back, they actually get pulled over by the police. And of course, the kid driving, Trevor, he doesn't have a license. And of course, Ecto-1 hasn't been registered forever. So
it's impounded.
They get all their equipment, and the car gets impounded. And they get in jail temporarily until their mom comes pick them up. So when things, they really need to get all their equipment back to actually fight this threat. Now that Zool is reunited and Gozer is actually reappearing, and basically the apocalypse is happening, they need to get their stuff back. So because Muncher eats metal, and they know he eats metal, and he was still in that trap, Podcast actually reaches through and releases that ghost. And the ghost comes out and actually eats the metal bars that were actually holding their equipment inside, and then runs off. Thankfully, that's all he did, because the first thing he does when he first sees him is he basically expels all this metal as bullets.
What happened to Podcast after they got arrested?
Yeah, I kind of wondered that. It's there was no one that really. I kind of thought the teacher was going to pick him up or something, but he never did.
Yeah, kind of just forgot about him.
They never really talk about his family. He's just kind of there. Yeah, the PKE meter, for whatever reason, when it got it turned into a stun gun.
Yeah.
And then, he can zap these ghosts and, they kind of explode.
We do get to the dumber parts of the movie. Not that it's bad, just branding. Where they put, in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, they have a bright, big-ass super Walmart for a town of 40 people. And Paul Rudd goes there for random reasons.
We did get a fun scene with the terror dogs, or at least one, Vince Clortho, in Walmart. Though again, that was another really weird moment, because literally nobody else in Walmart noticed what was happening, noticed the mini puffs.
But one of the devil dogs, Keymaster, just like Tully, and the ghosts have occupied the Walmart, including little baby psychotic Stay Puffs.
Marshmallow ghosts, that's what I like.
Well, the marshmallows. I don't like the marshmallow things. I mean, they're cute. I get it. It's callback from the first.
That was just fan service.
It was.
However, it totally made sense for this story to bring Stay Puft back, at least in some form, because of the Gozer connection.
I did like the scene. It was kind of unnecessary. It was just for commercial purposes.
It ended up not feeling all that forced, and was ultimately a pretty small part of the movie, but I thought this was a really earned reference that worked well within the overall story.
But they're roasting themselves to death on propane grills, riding around on Roombas. They were mean too. All the stuff in the commercial, it was whatever.
Although I kind of wondered, when it started fighting Paul Rudd's character's name, I was are these actually going? I mean, because he was supposed to be the form of the destroyer. Are they actually going to have this be the form of the destroyer, and he's just going to come back and coalesce?
Yeah,
and it didn't.
It might actually end up being the last time we see the big guy. Or, little guys.
But it really turned into something weird. It's supposed to be this cute little thing that to me, didn't land well. I mean, it was cute, but...
I just glazed over it. I wasn't
Yeah, I mean, it was easy to ignore, but it was just kind of a eye-rolling thing.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that they might bring the mini puffs back at some point. I just hope they don't overdo it.
Nobody in Walmart seemed to react or respond when this thing exploded out the front of the store. The only person that was responding to any of it was Paul Rudd. And it's in the original Ghostbusters, Rick Moranis' character, Lewis Tully, seems in at least one scene to be the only person that can see the terror dog, but yet we know that other people saw the terror dog. It's really weird. It's I can't tell whether they're supposed to be invisible hellhounds or not, because at the start of the film, we got a weird version of the terror dogs, and we didn't get to see it, which means they can be invisible. And then it was that half standing, half human, half terror dog thing was what the ghost was. It was very weird and confusing for me. I don't know if that's their ghost form, and then when they attack you, you turn into a terror, but then they are a terror dog in physical form.
The Keymaster takes over Paul Rudd after destroying the Walmart, and nobody else was there. Go figure.
Yeah, there's a lot about this movie and this franchise that's confusing. In terms of favorite ghosts, we don't get a ton of choices here. We basically have Muncher. We have kind of the return of the zombie cab driver, which I loved, him sitting at the diner. Unless we want to consider Zool and Vince Clortho as ghosts, maybe.
There's a scene near the end where, like, similar to how in Ghostbusters 1 and 2, you have, like, these montages of, like, ghosts escaping and, like, terrorizing people. They do a short version of that in this movie. Only two ghosts really that stand out to me in my memory. There's one that was kind of a old skeletal miner that was getting coffee in a coffee shop.
We have a ghost character that's actually from the animated series with the face and then a giant eye above it, which is kind of fun.
And then the one with the eyeball.
Yeah, and there was this eyeball one that, like, came, the eyeball came out first, then the ghost comes about behind it, then it goes and runs off. I think that's the only two from that scene that I remember. So, other than those two ghosts, the only other ghosts we have, you mentioned Gozer, which I don't know if you want to call her a ghost, as much as she's supposedly a god.
And then you have Egon. So I don't know who you can say really is your favorite. I think Muncher is an interesting character.
But there was a lot more ghosts, like, in the 2016 one, for sure.
Yes. The 2016 definitely did a lot. I mean, they were proud of their special effects.
Yeah.
They had a lot of ghosts, and there were a lot of really cool-looking ghosts in that one, too. Well, after I'd slept on it, I kind of came to realize what I didn't like about 2016 was that it was more of a parody of Ghostbusters than a Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
At the same time, Callie finds her dad's basement and finds out he really did love her. At some point, like, kept having photos or getting photos of her as she was growing up.
And of course, near the end of the movie, she finds, like,
all these pictures.
Pictures. Kind of guided by Egon Spengler's ghost.
Even though literally Egon did nothing for her except, watch from afar. But whatever.
You have Zool, both the Zools.
Time for Zool, the gatekeeper dog, to take over her.
There is no mom, only Zool.
And then Paul Rudd and Callie find their way to the mountain, and, well, insert lock and the key. Diggity.